Welcome to the Festival of Entrepreneurs, recorded live at the NEC in Birmingham. Over the next few minutes, you'll hear from some of the most incredible founders, investors, and business leaders who joined us this year.
In the last 10 years, more so maybe in the last 5, entrepreneurs are actually really happy to help each other out and give each other tips and advice. Whereas a few years ago, any business success, in my view, was considered top secret. They wanted to keep it to themselves. So even though you could be speaking to a competitor, they generally do share, not technology information, by the way, but share maybe tips. So today's going to be an interesting session. Anyway, I'm Trevor Jenkins. I'm a podcaster, an entrepreneur. At the moment, I present a podcast called Not Just Crew. And in the not too distant future, we're launching a podcast called Be Bold, Not Told, which is aimed at entrepreneurs, new entrepreneurs. And it's really trying to work out what gives somebody the courage to put their head over the parapet and actually start their own business. Because for a lot of people, it is very scary. Just out of interest, out of here, how many of you literally have started a business or how many of you actually got your own business now? Okay. And the rest of you just sort of think about starting a business perhaps? Okay, well, I have got the rock star entrepreneur with me today, fresh from Rome. And I'm glad to say, Samuel Pearton, and I suppose we can call you the Chief Marketing Officer for PolyHydra, which we're discussing is an actual mathematical shape. It's literally started off life, he's Australian, but he spent a long time in Birmingham in his younger days in a rock band called Scare, if I'm correct.
Correct.
Exactly. And I'm going to be asking you a bit about that later on. So, this is where you are now. You're a Chief Marketing Officer of a unicorn company. Now, I'm sure, does anyone not know what a unicorn company was? I don't want to embarrass anyone, just in case. If you don't know, it's a private equity sort of or private finance company that has reached over a billion. Does it mean if it's £1 billion or $1 billion?
$1 billion.
$1 billion, I say. I wasn't sure if it was if you correct transfer it. And I'm going to do it slightly different. I want to do like a fireside chat because I really want to know the ups and downs of how you got to where you are today. As I say, you have come back from Rome. We had a great chat there. So I'm going to sit down and literally, you mentioned Birmingham a lot because I really want to go back to how it all started. I say you're massively in AI, but we come on to that in a minute. What first brought you to Birmingham? Were you actually born here?
No, so thanks for showing up and thanks Trevor for having me, man. So yeah, I was in a band when I was a teenager. I grew up on a place called a small coastal town in Australia called the Sunshine Coast, and our band got signed in 2005 by EMI, and at that time there was a lot of kind of Australian rock and roll happening globally, and we got asked to move to the UK, and they put us in Birmingham. So we went from the beaches of the Sunshine Coast to inner city Birmingham. So it was a huge contrast, and but we had such a great time. We were in Birmingham for 2 years, and our band got to play Reading and Leeds and Glastonbury and tour the US a few times and release a few records, and made a lot of relationships. That was kind of the first kind of understandings I got, probably about how to leverage relationships and how to network, I guess.
Yeah, because being a rock star and a business person, entrepreneur, are two very different things. Both have got ambition, of course. You also had you pretty much signed up to EMI Records as well. Is that how big?
Yeah, we were signed to EMI. Yeah, we were signed to EMI Records.
Okay, so the next question is, what happened? What was the What's that you're off on a completely different tangent?
So it's hard, it was a difficult time, I think, to be a musician around that period. Digital downloads, counterfeit music was kind of, was what was happening. Spotify and the digital kind of monetization trend hadn't come in. Social media hadn't really taken off. So we were kind of in that, we were kind of in that era of that. It was hard. And I remember we were playing in Australia and, it was like a Tuesday night in a shitty little town. And I think, me and the singer just looked at each other and said, we were like 24, 25 at that point. And we just, none of us had any money. And I think it was just like, yeah, I'm done. so, so yeah. And I don't know if we stuck it out, a few of artists that were kind of at our level that stuck it out have become, big global acts. But yeah, no, it is what it is.
So what was the turning point? So it but literally be, and I say this isn't going to be about a rock conferences. We are going to go down. I've
It's
just
mud
got to
for it.
get.
It's mud
I've
for
got to
it.
get into the right place. Okay. So what was the point where you decided that music wasn't working out and you needed something different?
I think it was more so after the fact. I mean, even when I was in my band, I was the one like, making sure that I made the right relationships. For instance, I really wanted to play Big Day Out Festival in Australia. I went and interned at Big Day Out Festival when I was in my band to form those relationships. And, I always kind of understood the power of kind of networking and the business side of it. I was the one band member that directly worked heavily with like our creative directors and, you know, and producers and our management on the kind of commercial side of the business. I worked out, I haven't really played drums since, like I've drummed once for a friend in 2018 in LA. But that was the last time I've really played it. I worked out that I wasn't kind of addicted to kind of the playing of music, but more addicted to kind of, the chase of building something.
So you say you were the actual drummer
Yeah.
of the band. Now, did you? And this is where it's going to come to. Did you found you had to take control of the band to keep it together, or were you quite happy to do that role? And is that what you made you frustrated in the end?
No, I think it was a real. I think one thing about the band, it was five pretty strong kind of personalities with kind of our own vision. I think as you get older, it becomes harder and harder. It's the same as running a business. I mean, but generally when you've got one co-founder, being in a band, you've got four different personalities, or like having four, whatever. It's four brothers or whatever the case may be. It gets more and more difficult to kind of, have conducive thoughts on directional stuff. And I don't think it was, me not necessarily having control, but it just felt like it was the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where we're going to sort of come to the crux now about business. So you decided to leave Birmingham for China, I believe, and you went into teaching English.
Yeah, so I had a shot in the music business for a cup of coffee after the band, and it was probably not where I wanted to be, and I got the opportunity to move to China. I was really interested in China. The Beijing Olympics had kind of been on, and heard about the mass commercialization of China, and got the opportunity, and yeah, moved over there with my partner at the time, and started out just learning Chinese and studying, teaching English to kids. But started slowly getting immersed in the kind of the entrepreneurial scene there.
Yeah. So I mean, say, but how did you actually get into the entrepreneurial thing? Like it sounds so easy to say to.
Well, actually, I had a friend
Yeah.
from Australia, a guy called Reggie Barpay, that I met from my days in the band, and he was already pretty established in Shanghai. He had a couple of bars, and I really owe Reggie a lot. He really really kind of grandfathered me into the scene. I mean, I provided a lot of value at those early stages in China. I was touring bands and doing kind of brand deals and stuff, utilizing my music network at that point to kind of, help China, help China get that content, all those performances.
Yeah. Well, I mean, China. So I'm not sure if you guys have ever been lucky enough to go to Shanghai. It is the most vibrant place. It is really, other than Hong Kong, where east sort of meets west, in my eyes. How were you able to be immersed into that culture, and how were you accepted, especially in your first, not so much with music, because as I say, Western music seems to be pretty well liked over there anyway. But in a business sense, what would you say your first sort of
I think
broke
China's
down?
open. I think China's very open. I think it's they're very welcoming to people, culturally that can assist in growing their ecosystem. I felt that then at a very low level, and I still feel that now in terms of that there's an openness. There's an openness to collaboration, entrepreneurship, and fundamentally learning.
So, was your first break in technology, or did you go down a another route before you met
So I didn't
chemicals?
know. I mean, I didn't know. I had an idea. I saw how well Chinese celebrities at that point were kind of monetizing their audience online. So this is before Kardashians had brands and before the whole kind of creator economy, really. And the Chinese platforms, obviously TikTok's a Chinese business, but the Chinese platforms, this was 2015, 16, celebrities were live streaming and selling goods and making their own brands and creating these kind of, what we call kind of the fan economy. So I didn't know about capital raising or tech or any of that stuff. I just saw a problem that, China was firewalled. No one could access YouTube, Instagram, these platforms, and sports in particular, like the NBA and Premier League football, were ginormous, and there was that disconnect between between you know between the talent and the consumer, and I thought I want to try to solve this.
So what were in that case? What was the first Chinese company, or who took an interest in you, or was it an individual that you knew from the music scene
So
out there?
so basically, in terms of so I did a little bit of stuff before press play, but it was very just like consultancy work, just kind of hand to mouth agency type work. My first big idea, press play, my company. So basically, I came up with the idea, built a pitch deck. I'd actually met a guy from San Francisco in a bar in Shanghai when he was out on a business school trip. We got along. I also knew a guy in Shanghai, a football player. He played goalkeeper for England. I think a guy called Ian Walker. He started helping connect me to different people, and we got connected to Cristiano Ronaldo's management quite quickly. That ended up falling through, but I managed to actually sign Stephen Curry, the NBA superstar. This is 2015, just before he won his first MVP. And that was done from a cold call. I literally was staying at my parents' place in Australia and cold called cold called Stephen Curry's manager. He called me back. He liked what I was thinking about doing. He liked that I'd spent time in China, that I knew the culture, that I'd, immersed myself in it. And yeah, that was my first, once I had Stefan, but saying that, I offered Stefan 500K for the first year and I had $20 in my bank at that point. So,
Okay.
it was a huge risk at that time.
What would you have done had he said yes?
He did say yes.
Oh, he did say yes. And who did you have to go to? Or
So yeah, we had 3 months to pay him. So I called my buddy in San Francisco and said, "Hey man, I'm coming over there."
yeah.
And he booked me a ticket, and yeah, we got to work, and actually we were 7 days out through the contract being void from not paying, and I met a gentleman called Michael Malfrante through our lawyer Murray Indick, and Michael, extremely successful hedge fund guy. He didn't even look at a deck. He didn't even look at anything. He just heard the vision, liked us, and he wrote us our first check for 500K.
Okay, you do make it sound incredibly easy. I don't
Oh
know.
no,
I
it's
don't take
definitely not. I mean,
No, I know
I
it
think
doesn't, but
we were incredibly lucky. I mean, so Stephen Curry, NBA player from the Bay Area,
yeah.
where all funding's from. So most of my capital raising in the early stages for Press Play was just taking people to watch Stefan play, just like sit and then meet Stefan afterwards. Here's Stefan's interest. It got much harder after the first. I mean, I think even today that probably the easiest round to raise fundamentally sometimes is the first one, because you're selling in how you want people to believe it's going to go. The adversity starts happening when you start trying to build. But
So,
it definitely Press Play was definitely not an
No.
easy journey.
well, this is what I take you to Press Play. You've described it as your initial first success, but you also described it as your sort of first sort of failure. You are not failure, but you weren't quite happy with how it ended.
I mean, I think, you know, like the business in China just got increasingly more difficult to operate as a foreigner, as we gained traction, had, millions of users and loads of revenue flowing through our platform. Um, you know, we had to bring on more partners, margins just kind of, margins didn't make sense. And, but it was really something, that was such an incredible experience. And I mean, I'm still incredibly close with all our investors now. My whole network, and I had a happy ending,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a happy ending. It kind of set me up for the next thing. Um, and that's what, but now I have 15 investors that I can call. Um, I'm still collaborating with several of them on different things. Um, and it got me in that kind of in the zone to be able to, then enter kind of the next phase of what I wanted to do.
Which we're going to come on to now. And thank you everyone for being so patient. But I've been wanting to speak to this young man for a long, long time, and I always one of the things I find most interesting about entrepreneurs is the backstory. Literally, I really want to know everything. It doesn't mean it can be repeated exactly, but I just find it so interesting. Right, let's get on to PolyHydra. Explain roughly what the company is and its function.
All right, so there's a little bit in between Press Play and PolyHydra. I'd planned to do a fund with the Chinese conglomerate Tencent. We plan to create a cross-border initiative that basically funded global businesses looking to go into China. And, I had momentum. I had actually the first site in Australia, deals with the Australian government, funding, and then COVID hit and that all fell apart. And then also at that time as well, I'd raised some money to do a secondary e-commerce business, and that failed over COVID, and I had to pay the investors back. So, you know, there was a lot of self-doubt in that period of like, am I good enough? Can I actually do this? Have I had my time in the sun? So I just wanted to give some context there, because it wasn't like I went from one win to one. There was a few years where it was like, a lot of in my own head, working out how to navigate. And actually, when the Tencent deal broke down, but the head of Tencent in the US, a guy called Eagle E, a good friend of mine, he connected me to these bunch of researchers in from Berkeley University. Young guys, all in their kind of early 20s, mid to early 20s at that point. They had this idea of building the verification layer for AI, which I'll get to more in a bit. But Eagle was like, Sam, you know how to work with Chinese people, the culture, these guys are the best and brightest, they want you on the founding team. So, they brought me in, and I've been responsible really for raising all the capital, and driving the whole go-to-market business.
Yeah. Would you say, I mean, AI? Well, I suppose it wasn't even a thing when you first started your band, but how did you fall into that? Is it because you could see it helping your business, or could you see it would be a fantastic business opportunity in the future?
Yeah, I think it was just I'm interested. The more I've worked with these guys, I mean, after press play, I generally wanted to get closer, kind of to the infrastructure layer. So what mean by that, like, you know, closer to the complete technical kind of infrastructure of how things are operated. Um, and these guys, PhD researchers from Berkeley, they have the capability to build and solve, incredibly hard problems with their minds. Um, so I fell into it really. I mean, I have, I did have actually a lot of opportunities. It wasn't like I took this just because it was there. I generally ultimately believe in this particular mission is what we're trying to solve, like, um, but yeah, I mean, AI is a commodity, right? It's like oil or, we should be looking at it like oil or gas or, you
Well,
know,
I thought,
or agriculture. Like it's just like it's its own bucket. And
yeah,
smart nations are looking at it like that anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah. Just out of interest, those of you got your own business, how many of you are actively engaging in AI? And I don't just mean sort of chat GBT, but actually using AI. Okay, that was a fair few, and I think that's going to
yeah,
that is
it
going.
makes your life a lot easier.
No, it's no, it most certainly does. Right, okay. Believe it or not, we're limited on time, so we're going to have to skip forward to unicorn.
Yeah.
Suddenly change into you. I mean, how? I mean, did that happen over? Did it happen quickly? Cut a long story short.
I mean, yeah, for us it was pretty quick. I mean, I think in the AI hype cycle, like investors are throwing ridiculous money and valuations at companies that they see will be really impactful over the next 5 to 10 years. You know, our you know, our focus is now and getting to actual product. I mean, we have had some smaller products where we're currently in the process of releasing our kind of verifiable AI infrastructure, and that, in short, we're all going to have robots in our house. AI is going to be used in hospitals, in autonomous cars, and our technology uses, some hardware, but mainly cryptographic software techniques to basically tell you if the model has been tampered with or not. So there are going to be cases when people hack robots in houses and robots try to kill people or
Yeah.
kill people.
Yes.
You'll have like a switch if if our technology is involved, the consumer will be able to hit a switch and actually get a trustless, so a mathematical proof that that model's operating like it
Yeah.
should be. So it's a compliance tool that basically should be implemented, whether it's first implemented by governments or by consumer, I don't know, but where we've been, my CTO calls it sometimes like we're marketing at the moment like landing on the moon. Like it's because it's not a direct impact. I mean, I don't think many people really care when they're using ChatGPT what model they're using. But when it comes to these kind of, agentic commerce is hot at the moment where people are giving access to, ChatGPT to do transactions for them. We're going to see these big real life kind of issues where you need to prove if a model is correct or not. So that's what we're doing. And, but it's hard. It's fucking, sorry for swearing. It's hard.
No, I know.
But
No one heard that. Don't worry. And this is sort of vib coding.
what's
Do you know
that?
Vib coding.
No. So vibe coding's just a fun way. I mean, vibe coding's just a fun way to get to market. I think anyone's building, I think it's cool now that, I think there's going to be just a lot more velocity of founders because in the past you needed kind of, lots of sides to the coin to build a business. Now you can use AI and get to kind of from 0 to 1 much faster.
Yeah, we can. All right, listen, it's literally just because to say, I know last time it was hard to get a few questions in. Um, Have any of you got any questions for Samuel, either on his personal life or his business model of the way it's like to become part of a unicorn company? Okay, right. What we can do, well, that's not bad because it can actually gives me some more time because I was running out there because um, to try and go through your life in literally 30 minutes was never, ever going to be easy. So you've just been out in a big conference in Rome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what was that regarding? Was that to talk about yourself? Was it to talk about your company? Was it to talk about
Yeah, that was
the road to
just
market?
a friend of mine event. I mean, my partner Veronica, she's Italian. So we spend about half the year in Italy. We have a place out there, and we love Italy. And I'm passionate about Italian. The Italian, just like I am passionate about the UK tech ecosystem. I mean, Italy's kind of gone in the different direction. They're very open and welcoming to outside investment and entrepreneurship. So I'm finding it much easier as an Australian to collaborate with that ecosystem at the moment. There's a lot, hopefully, that needs to kind of change or reset in how we are in the UK at the moment. Because I think there's so many amazing talent here. But anyways, back. So yeah, it's just a mind share. I got to share. I got to do a fireside chat with another Australian guy called Frank Meehan, who he's based in London as well, but he was on the board of Spotify and Siri, and has invested in about 200 different AI startups, or high tech startups over the last 10 years. So yeah, it was just like this, man. Getting to talk to a good friend, and then some really good Italian food.
Oh, brilliant! No, listen, big lover of Italy myself. So, when you're the chief executive officer of a unicorn company, and those figures just astound me. How much of your work would you consider remote working nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, it's our whole team's remote. I mean, we do have a couple of offices globally. But we operate at this stage pretty well remotely. I think, you know, um, press play, we had offices. My regret was blending too much of the kind of go to market team, so the business team, with the technical team. I should have been much more trusting of the technical team to just let them do their thing. You know, I spent a couple of months with our CTO traveling, and he's just in his own world. His life is his work. He doesn't have, you know, that's just his personality, right? So, but you need to make sure that people own their stuff. But we're all on Slack, and we try to all, minimize meetings, but have as many kind of all hands meetings and executive leadership meetings, and try to catch up in person as well. But yeah, we're a fully remote team. We have people all through the US, Australia, China, through Europe, the UK, so yeah, it's a true global team.
Working remotely, everyone always sings its benefits. Can you think of any disadvantages that you wish didn't exist?
I mean, I just think you need to be disciplined to more so switch off. So like it could be midnight, and instead of trying to spend quality time with the family, you know, you don't really set, for me, it's trying to set healthy boundaries, I guess. It's like I'm not someone that needs to be like at an office to incentivize myself to get shit done. It's more like I need to kind of learn to switch off more and be in the moment and not let work completely, you know, take over my whole existence.
No, of course. Well, I'm just going to go into a bit of any advice for capital raising for a startup company, not necessarily tech, any kind of business.
Yeah, I think if you can get to product market fit, just be super passionate and don't be afraid of saying no. I mean, go on LinkedIn and, do the research. Even with AI now, you could research, investors, angel investors, funds that are in your specific, industry, and just, call their office, keep sending them, just hammer people. I mean, be fearless. Don't be scared of saying no. And um, and also don't be scared of raising money. I mean, investors, everyone in the game that invests in early stage businesses, they know the risk, you know.
Yeah.
They know that, out of every Figma that potentially makes index ventures, 3000x, there's 50 other startups that they've lost on. So I think that's a big misconception. If I invest in something like, you know, like it's that I don't have the pressure. I'm not going to be knocking on the guy's door to get my money back if it goes poorly. So I think a lot of people are worried about that. What feel the burden of asking people for money. But this is how it works. Founders are supported generally by founders who have had success, and then the pattern kind of keeps going. So, I think before doing anything, if you're going to raise money, um, just make sure you really care. Just make sure you have enough conviction in the idea of what you're doing. And then, once you have that conviction, just try to do whatever it takes, and don't feel ashamed, like, walking up to someone if you see them at a conference, or messaging them on LinkedIn 20 times, because I guarantee you that person that you're doing that to has been in that exact same situation.
Yeah.
So, and they'll completely respect your resilience. And then the last thing is, it's becoming a lot more, just the way business and the way, the digital economy works, create content, get your content going, short video, writing blogs, build your own audience, start a podcast, do that alongside that. Investors are looking more and more into people's reach, because actually it's as a founder, there's a startup in San Francisco at the moment called Cluey, and they're getting 10 million TikTok impressions. It's almost like they're almost like they're creators, but they're, technical founders from Colombia. And so that's a big bit of advice is, making sure that you're really consistent with content alongside being, completely fearless.
Would you say you're a big believer in the elevator pitch, where you can literally have to put your whole concept within about a second, or is that
I don't know if I'm very good at elevator pitches, but no, I think it's great. I think, if you can describe what you're doing, you know, why, the problem, the solution, and why you, in an articulate manner, that, for sure with time for people, that's pretty important.
Yeah, okay, listen, this is probably the most asked question ever asked. Okay, the most, really quickly, and hopefully you won't hate this one, guys. Knowing what you know now, what would you do differently?
I mean, I'm pretty cool. Honestly, like, I'm actually really content with my life, and I don't think I'd change anything. I mean, along the way, there's been things where you think, could have done this differently, but you know, the failures. I love the Chinese farmer story by Alan Watts. If anyone's,
Quickly,
um,
I'd love to know it.
yeah, I mean, it's just basically, if I have time, it's, um, it's a Chinese farmer, and one day his horse runs away, and everyone around him says, "Oh, that's a terrible thing that your horse has run away." And he says, "Maybe." And then the next day, the horse comes back with 5 more horses. And they say, "Oh, what a great sign of events." And he goes, "Maybe." Then his son's breaking in the horse and falls off and breaks his leg. And everyone says, "Oh, what a terrible thing to happen." And he says, "Maybe." Then the army comes around the next day to conscript young men to go to war, and the son can't go because he has a broken leg. And we always tend to make, we tend to always look at such small sample sizes in our life.
Yeah.
Like, even I was devastated when my fund with Tencent fell through. But then through that relationship, I ended up in PolyHydra, which has now become a unicorn. So, you know, like these sliding doors moments, you know, I think if you can just try to stay as level-headed, just take the punches, you know, and just realize that, you know,
Tenacity.
yeah, that things are going to be okay. So that's my answer.
Okay, I knew this would happen. It's run out far too quickly. I said this before we met. I need 4 or 5 hours to go through your whole.
I don't know about that, man.
No, seriously. Samuel Pearton, thank you so much for your
Thank you,
time
brother.
today. If you ever want to see what part of a unicorn looks like, this is the man. So a big round of applause.
I don't know about that.
Also, thank you so much for
Thank you, brother.
lovely space here. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thanks for watching this special episode from the Festival of Entrepreneurs. Our mission is simple: to help founders and business owners grow faster, think bigger, and take action. And if you were part of the event, thank you for joining us and being part of the community. And if you missed it, don't worry. We'll be back with even more ideas, inspiration, and opportunities to help you take your business to the next level. You can find out more and register for future events at festivalofentrepreneurs.co.uk.